Okay guys, this is Mr. Sinclair going through Coaches for All Occasions, or Enviro Coaches, as I discussed. First step in all of this is to really dig deep, as I like to say, in terms of the story, in terms of the case study. So we need to find out a little bit about this business. So first of all, we're going to look and read a little bit about them. Sorry about the wobble there. They are an LTD. Now that's quite important to start with. A private limited company, locally based manufacturing firm. They make stuff. They produce energy efficient coaches for markets both at home and abroad. So they're going to sell locally and they're going to sell overseas. So there's potential for export. Founded in 2001, the Simpson brothers, blah blah blah. Employed 500 people. Now that grows as I've skipped on down and found out about. And they now employ 1,200 workers. So what do we take from that? We take that staff are very important. Staff important. So as a stakeholder group, they're an important group. What else have we got? We've got an LTD, local, family firm. What else was I going to say? Manufacturer. An exporter. So there are. Okay, so staff are important. It's a family, private limited company. It's locally based. It's a manufacturer. It's exporting. 25% of their exports are going overseas. What else have we got to say? Customers are a big deal as well. So there's customers are a big stakeholder group. They seem to talk a lot about quality. Their mission statement, I'm going to call it their MS, talks about being innovative. Sorry about my nasty writing here. Innovative, high quality, and energy efficient. Sorry, really nasty writing here. Oh, really horrible writing. You get the idea. So what am I thinking from all this? I'm thinking really this is suggesting to me this is a niche market. We're talking about relatively low volumes. We're talking about high profit margins. We're talking about limited competition. There's a sense that there may be a USP here, a unique selling point to this firm. It's not explicit, it's not stated in the text, but it's something that you can draw inferences on, but you're only going to do that if you really dig deep into the story the way I'm doing now. I'm doing it in a very time consuming way, in a very step by step way. You can do it far faster because you've only got yourself to address, you've only got yourself that you're communicating with, hopefully, given that it's an exam. Let's have a look now in the financial data. We'll go to the next slide actually for that. Okay, so we can see mentions here to retain its competitive edge and reduce carbon emissions, Enviro Coaches invests a substantial amount of capital in research and development and uses advanced technology to manufacture efficient, eco-friendly coaches. Again, this reinforces the idea of high value added product. Yeah, they've got to meet high standards to be able to sell them in South Korea. So again, tying into that idea about it being a high quality product with a big focus on innovation, energy efficiency, and trying to meet the needs of their customers. So again, everything hints that this is a high quality product in possibly a niche market. So we'll look now at the finances in the next slide. Okay, so financial data. Now look, one thing just to be very mindful of is the fact that the years are going from right to left. Now this is quite standard format for accounting documents, so it is pretty much the way the real world works, but you just need to check, okay? They may be going left to right, or they may go right to left in terms of the latest year, and you just need to double check that before you start doing your analysis. In terms of your analysis, please do not write about, oh, they're up by 1, they're up by half or $500,000, they're up by 2. That's all very, very basic. That's like a D/C grade answer. What they want here is proportional change. Okay, if you don't know how to calculate percentage change because it's been a while, you need to have that nailed down. So what has happened in terms of their sales revenue? Their sales revenue is up by 22.2%. Their net profit before tax is up by 100%. Their non-current assets are up by a third, so 33.3%, whatever. Current assets have increased by 150%. And current liabilities are up by, sorry, still getting a bit squeezed, up by 200%. Okay, total equity and liabilities are up by 50%. So it's looking pretty positive. So what's happened? Sales rep, squeeze it. Whoops. Okay, so sorry about the school bell going off there, but sales revenue up 22%, net profit up by 100%. Okay, so just to follow on, sorry. Sales up 22%, net profit before tax is up 100%. So obviously they're doing something right and controlling their costs, because the increase in net profit has been more substantial than the increase in sales. So they must be controlling their cost of sales, or possibly their expenses, or possibly both, very well. Net current assets, meaning their fixed assets, meaning their premises, their machinery, possibly vehicles, in this case not coaches because that would be stock, but maybe like delivery trucks or maybe even forklift trucks, that kind of stuff, up by 33%. So they're investing in the firm, essentially. They're investing in the fixed assets of the firm. Current assets also up by 150%. Now that may be a good thing or a bad thing. If it's more cash, that's a good thing. If it's more stock, more inventory, that may not be such a good sign, because it may mean that there's a backlog of coaches which need to be sold, essentially, and they're not able to do that. Off the back of that, also, their current liabilities have increased by a larger percentage than the increase in current assets, which would indicate that they're running up more debt, which is a little bit worrying. But again, if they're trying to expand and they're trying to grow into Asia and so on, there may be good reasons for that. They may have borrowed more. They may have more creditors that they owe money to simply from suppliers of component parts, or that sort of thing. Total equity and liabilities is also up by 50%, which would indicate that they're investing in the business. Now that may be they're investing and they have invested more share capital from the fact that it's a private limited company. They've invited more investment from the family, but it may also mean that they're more indebted, but we don't have clarification on the breakdown between what's equity and what's liability, so we can only speculate about that. But it's certainly a firm which is investing in itself and trying to develop, it seems. Anyway, they're trying to develop the capacity to grow further. Okay, in terms of the ratios that you can use, you don't have enough for all of the ratios. They don't actually ask you for all of this information, but it's something that shouldn't be too far beyond your capabilities. Net profit percentage was 11%. Now I've gone, by the way, in case you're getting confused, I've gone from 2010 2011 on a little bit more logical approach for us non-accountants. So sorry if that doesn't tie in with what's up here, but you can, anyway, I'll try and keep you right. So they've gone from 11% to 18%. So that would indicate that their profit margin has actually increased. So that's very healthy. Now it hasn't gone up as much as 22%, which is how much sales went up by. But it's still very encouraging that in the it's difficult economic climate, and they seem to be having concerns about long-term survival, as mentioned. That's encouraging. The current ratio was 2 to 1, which means they have £2 of current assets for every £1 of current liabilities or short-term debt. That has fallen slightly to 1.7 to 1, so it means they've now got £1.70 to every £1 of short-term debt. So they more than cover it. I mean, realistically, 2 is nice, but 1.7 is okay. It's really not dire circumstances if it's 1.70. They're more than enough. It's more than 1.5, times their level of short-term debt. Return on capital employed is also up, so from a shareholder point of view, that's encouraging. especially given all the talk and doom and gloom about their challenging circumstances and how they're going to evolve and survive. So as a shareholder, we would really be thinking, well, we need to compare this with other firms in the same industry, but certainly from the previous year, this is encouraging and the figure is moving in the right direction. Okay, so here we have our investment appraisal essentially of the 2 solar power systems that they're considering installing to help cut their costs and improve their efficiency, which is all in keeping with their mission statement about being energy efficient. We can see lots of different figures here. Okay, we know from our understanding of net present value that whichever is the higher number is the better one. So solar, just net present value, solar power system A is better. I'm going to do a little, because it's positive 2.19 thousand as opposed to positive or negative 2.81, apologies. We will do a little bit more digging. I have time to do this. Whether you'll have time or not in the exam, we'll have to discuss, but let me just shrink this down a little bit for now. I don't really need all that right now. And let's just go to, I'm just going to say solar A and solar B. Okay, so 3 measures. MPV is obviously done for you, so happy days. We could have done the math, but they did it for us. So this one is the winner. Yay, on MPV they win. Let's look at the other ones. Okay, so payback happens at some stage in year 3 for both firms. Year 3. But actually, if we look at what happens, it's £30,000 is still outstanding at the beginning of year 3, divided by 30,000 pounds is the income. Sorry. Yeah, it's 30 is required. Let me pause this for a second. 30,000 is required, 40 is the amount coming in, so it will happen before the end of the year. So 30 over 40 times 12 is 3/4 of a year, so it would be 9 months. So payback would happen in 2 years, 9 months. For this, for solar B, it's 40 over 50 in year 3 times 12. So it's 80% of a year, which works out slightly inconveniently at 9.6 months, which we then round up to 10 months, so it's 2 years, 10 months. So slightly later, not by much. I mean, it's a tiny amount, but it still does mean that solar A is the winner on payback. Okay, I'm just going to try and shrink these a little bit, make some way. For I'll see if I can fit in ARR now underneath. Let me see. Average rate of return. Okay, should be neater than it is, but it'll be fine. So let's say ARR for this one is the total sort of profit of the project divided by the cost of the project is 8,000 over 170,000 times 100. It's a bit rough here, but anyway, 4.7% per annum. Over here then it is 7 over 170 times 100, which is obviously going to work out a little bit less. You can figure that out already. 4.1% PA. So the winner over here yet again is solar A. So solar A looks like it's going to be the pick on all of these quantitative measures. You'd really have to look at qualitative factors to argue for solar B. There's no real quantitative support for it. There's not that much in it. The most compelling argument is the net present value. So overall, probably because there are slightly more inflows, larger inflows of cash in the early years, which means when the heavier discounting happens in the later years of the return on the project, then those factors are being discounted quite significantly. So the fact that it pays back a little bit faster means that this project is better overall, and it's a slightly better average profitability or average return on the original investment. So it wins. Solar A is the winner quantitatively. Okay, so what have we found out from the second page of the case study, or story as I always like to call them? Firstly, they're investigating grant funding for investment in solar energy, which obviously ties in with their energy efficiency and eco-friendly policies, which is all very consistent with their overall brand and image and so on. Okay, got investment appraisal. We'll look at that in the next slide in more detail, and we'll dig into it not just in terms of net present value, which is listed here, but also in terms of payback and average rate of return. Whether you would have time to do that in an exam, I think I would be prompted by the question set, to be honest with you, but it definitely, again, on the theme of digging down deep, that is definitely a way of digging deep into the context that you're given. What else happens? This final paragraph just tells us about this random event that there's a crash and a late delay in delivery caused by a problem with a supplier. But I can't help but feel that things are not as calamitous as are left. I mean, the bit down here says, unless handled correctly by management, these unfortunate events may prove detrimental to the reputation of the business and jeopardize future orders. So you're basically going against the original data, which suggested that sales are up, net profit is up, net profit margin is up, return on capital employed is up. A slight dip in gearing, but it's still not disastrous. And the theme that you're being left with is that there's been this one crash, and which is a mystery and is concerning because they have a history of high quality and they have a focus on safety, but it doesn't really mean that everything should be derailed in terms of the business and how it evolves. So it's hard to know whether you really have to put an awful lot of weight on these. You've really got to give a balanced view. It certainly helps in terms of your AO4, your balancing, your however points. It's going to give you plenty to work with because it's not all positive information, which is kind of a good thing. But I don't think we should skew our overall view of the business that it's a complete disaster or it's impending doom. Okay, so this is just the question about net present value. It's a 15-mark question, so we're going to need 3 paragraphs plus a distinct conclusion. Do not forget your conclusion. A couple of people handed in past paper questions recently, 15 markers and 20 markers, and a number of them had no conclusion at the end. In the week, in the lead up to the exam, you need to have all this stuff nailed down, and definitely the structure needs to be for a 15 marker. You have 3 points in a conclusion. For a 20 marker, you have 4 points in a conclusion. Do not deviate from that, please. Alright, so just on that note, structure, just as a reminder, visual reminder, for a 15 mark question, you need to have 3 points plus a conclusion. For a 20 marker, you need 4 points of conclusion. Do not deviate from this. Don't decide to be clever and leave out a conclusion or only do 2 points or something like that. The examiner will be querying that as a first point of assessment for each question will be, is it the right structure? Okay, so if you deviate from that, you're going to be marked down severely, and there's no way you're achieving more than a C grade if you decide to deviate from that. So don't deviate from that. There's nothing to be gained from doing so. Again, on structure, let's just have a look at this example. This is from a current year 14 student whose exam technique is fairly good, and although some of the writing here is a little bit skewed and the lighting is not great, hasn't shown it up in very high resolution, you can see clearly what's happened here. He's opened the line with a definition, which is a great way to start, especially if you're not sure about exactly how the answer is going to progress. Here's point 1, developed, okay. Distinct paragraph here. Here's point 2. He's left a clear line there. The examiner can see this at arm's length. Even without zooming in here, we can see this guy has done 3 points. And then what do you know, I can even see the word in conclusion down there. Right. Now already this guy has got his structure right. This is going to be probably a C grade answer already. There seems to be a fair bit of detail, but we'll have to dig down into that in just a moment. But what the examiner subconsciously at least is thinking is that this is going to be probably quite a good answer. He's ticked the boxes in terms of getting the scaffolding right, and so it's just a matter of how much meat is on the bone. Right now the examiner is looking at this and thinking C grade plus. So from C grade up, he's already got a hard floor of a C grade, and it's certainly not going to be any less than that. So you need to make sure that you follow suit. For a 15 marker, 3 points laid out distinctively like this. 1, 2, 3, plus your distinct conclusion, with a gap between each to make it quite clear where your points begin and end. Okay, so now we need to analyse in a little bit more detail what makes a good paragraph. Okay, well, he started off with a definition here, as I mentioned before. So net present value calculates the rate of return on an investment project, accounting for interest rates and time. That'll do. Okay, he's getting marks for AO1 there. Alright, but we want to dig down into this and see exactly what he has written. So let's just bring that up as big as we can. I know that the lighting and the definition is not outstanding here. An advantage to Enviro Coaches of using net present value is that it is the only investment appraisal method that gives a precise answer with their bleak future due to the recession. Gives a precise answer. Okay, well, I don't know about that. That's not actually 100% right, because the payback tells you it's 2 years 9 months, and it's 2 years 9 months. It's maybe easier as a comparison, but it's not a great opener. But anyway, let's continue on, see what else he does, because actually there's bound to be something good to salvage from this. With their bleak future due to the recession, Enviro Coaches need a definitive figure to keep how long it will take to repay the solar power system. Okay, so that is AO2 with a little bit of AO3, because he's trying to imply what the use will be. So he's essentially pointing out that, you know, what the benefit will be. So that's a little bit analytical. This would allow, this is good stuff, this is going into AO3 here, analysis. This would allow Enviro Coaches to be able to plan a cash flow forecast to ensure they can afford the solar power system. So there's what I like about this is that there's a little bit of context here. He's being specific. He's not just talking about investment generally. He's talking about specifics, the solar power system. It didn't take much effort, but it helps. Which will then allow Enviro Coaches to avoid taking out a loan or using their overdraft, for their current liabilities have increased by 200% between 2010 and 2011. There's some really sophisticated AO2 and AO3. And like I said, that makes a big difference, percentage change calculation, than just saying it's gone up by X in terms of discrete value as opposed to proportional change. This will then, so he's essentially got here, he's got 3-stage analysis. This will then allow Enviro Coaches to increase their net profit, I like, enabling them to invest in advertising to increase their sales. That's AO3. Now I hope he gets into some context here, because increasing sales and market share is kind of generic analysis. Helping Enviro Coaches weather the recession. Alright, he's going banging on about the recession again, but it's still relevant, so I'm going to give him a wee nod there, AO2. However, net present value can be hard to calculate, yes. So a mistake in the calculations could be disastrous for Enviro Coaches, as they may not be able to afford the solar panel system. Just a little bit is enough. So really what you want to do is, although I'm criticizing him because his opening point was technically not quite right, generally this approach of a smattering of AO2, not just here, this is important up here, I'll maybe change that colouring here. This AO1, AO2, AO3, AO3, AO4 process, for each paragraph is very good, okay, but It's the little smattering of context, the solar power system, the increase in profitability, the increase in current liabilities here, weather the recession here, afford the solar power system. Everything is embedded closely into the case study, the story as I like to call it. You've got to do that to make the difference between a C grade and an A grade answer. And the fact that he is at every point referring to this business, Enviro Coaches, Enviro Coaches, Enviro Coaches. He's not quoting big chunks of text, but he's making a little nudge, a little reference to the circumstances that they face, and that makes it a very compelling argument. And that's the model really that you need to copy.